This podcast includes graphic depictions of true crime cases and may contain explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Hey, this is Robin.
This is Jackie.
And this is Amanda.
And you are listening to We Saw the Devil, a podcast dedicated to horror, true crime, and all things macabre. If you want to follow us between shows, don't forget to check us out online. You can go to our website at www.wesawthedevil.com. You can follow us on Instagram at We Saw the Devil Podcast or on Twitter at We Saw the Devil. And if you want to follow specific co-hosts' social media, you can find the links to those on our website as well. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of We Saw the Devil. This week is Autopsy Edition. As promised, we have brought on Iris, an autopsy technician, to go over Alex Cox's autopsy results and the burning questions that all of us have, which I had a blast.
I loved her. Yes, thank you so much again, Iris.
Iris will keep it real.
Yeah, she's awesome.
As promised, we have the discussion, kind of deep dive on the autopsy results with an actual autopsy technician. And then we will be covering parts 2 and 3 of Nate Eaton's interview with Melanie and Ian, which I am hot over parts 2 and 3.
Right, I was angry watching them because I just wanted to shake Melanie.
I love that you messaged when you were watching it and you were like, I want to shake her. And then less than 5 minutes later, you're like, no, scratch that. I want to slap the shit out of her. I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh, it made me so angry. Yes. So we will talk about the angry interview that I had watched this week.
But before that, you can find us all of our social media handles. Our website is wesawthedevil.com. You can find us on Instagram, We Saw the Devil Podcast, and then Facebook and Twitter at We Saw the Devil. Please, please, please subscribe to us on YouTube. We have some cool content, already started working on it. And then what about our Patreon, Amanda?
We have some new patrons. So welcome new patrons, Lauren, Julie, Courtney, and Akasha. We super appreciate your support. And if you haven't already joined our private Facebook group for patrons, check your guys' messages. If you have any questions, send us an email.
And also make sure we do have patron-only episodes there as well. So make sure if you're joining our Patreon, you have access to the Patreon-only episodes and also the private Facebook group. So.
Yeah, and we've had some good conversations again today, too. I think while we've been recording, more stuff's been happening, and I can't wait to go back to it.
You know, I would feel bad, but I do love that one of our members has one of Chad Daybell's books and has been posting it in the group chat.
Yeah, so I'm going to be reading some of his book later, too. Yeah, so we have a lot of reading to catch up on once we finish podcasting today.
Yes.
And as reference, as we've been doing, because this case is nuts and it changes every 20 seconds.
It is now 9:11 p.m. Pacific time on May 13th, 2020.
So when it changes in an hour, so sorry, we'll get back to it.
Also, let's go ahead and do our countdown. As everyone knows, the end of the world is happening on July 22nd of this year. Currently, we have 70 days, guys. 70 days until Armageddon. That is 1,680 hours, 70 days, or 10 weeks, however you want to mark it down until the world ends.
Yeah, and tell us how you plan on celebrating your last day. I mean, I wonder what Chad Daybell will be doing. Probably going into the portal.
He's going through that portal nightly.
And with that, we will start the interviews. So part 2 and 3 came out on the same day, and that is with Nate Eaton, and he's with East Idaho News. And it just leaves off right where the first one ended. So it's all the same conversation. He just broke it up into 3 parts.
It starts very abruptly, too.
Yeah. But I did appreciate that. It begins, so part 2 begins with them talking about the last time they saw Tylee and JJ. Ian says he never met them. And Melanie says it was back when they were packing up the Arizona house, so the one that Charles was shot in. Nate asks Melanie, did you ever visit Rexburg before moving there? And Melanie did. She says that she went to Rexburg before moving, and she went for a weekend to visit Lori. And she starts talking about how she didn't see the kids there either, and sort of dances around not seeing them. I don't know if you noticed that, but she immediately goes into Tylee was with friends. She's always with friends.
Yes.
So I didn't ask any questions about that. If they just moved there not terribly long before that, Like, whose friends' houses was she going to for the weekend? You know,
Right.
or for however many days she was there. It just seems very weird that she just made these BFFs there, no problem. I know she had them in Arizona, but she was in Arizona for quite a long time, you know?
Yeah.
And a teenager going to school here. She wasn't going to school there. Where'd she meet this best friend?
Exactly. Melanie has given so many conflicting statements of, oh my God, my Aunt Lori was like my second mother. Like, she was like my mother figure, and, you know, so close, so close. She nannied Tylee, was in Texas when Tylee was younger. So I don't quite understand how they just moved to Rexburg and Tylee is gone. Like, gone. And she doesn't inquire?
No, it just seemed normal. She's always with friends. She lives at friends' houses. She never comes home ever. But anyways, so she does mention too, JJ, like, you know, where's JJ? JJ was either doing therapy or with a nanny or in school that would help him. She just like lists all these things that he might have been doing. But again, a little boy doesn't go to therapy for multiple days in a row, at least not that I've ever heard of. Maybe I'm wrong. Why would he go to a nanny for days in a row? Wouldn't the nanny come to them in most cases?
And Lori wasn't working at this time, right?
Not that I have read.
No, me neither.
What school would take him for the weekend? So, Melanie, what? No. And just if she, like you said, she's so close to Lori, she theoretically would be fairly close to the kids. I know.
Yeah.
You know, you would want to know where your cousins are, right? So I just didn't understand that. And this is a big reason why I don't trust Melanie at all. She's so quick to go, well, they're with friends. They're at therapy for 4 years. No. And what psychopath doesn't notice that kids don't do this? You know, if I was visiting someone, a family member, and their kids weren't there the entire time I'm there, I'm like, well, I came out here. I kind of want to see them. Let's go get them from this friend's house. Let's go get them from the nanny. I'll hang out with them for a bit. But Melanie did frustrate me quite a bit with that. And then this is where Nate then asks, did you ever ask where the kids were after not seeing them for days and days? And I did appreciate it. Though, you know, like he says it in a sincere, nice way, but like he's like, this makes no sense. So then she talks about the move with Alex on Halloween night and mentions that she was so involved with setting up her new home and figuring out her kids' stuff. Lori's independent and doing her own thing again. Melanie didn't spend a lot of time at Lori's. But then in this conversation, she does mention Lori had a room set up perfectly for Tylee and JJ. So then that's where I'm like, I remember a nanny statement saying otherwise. So I went back and I found the statement, and the first place I was able to locate it was Fox 13 News, and it was back in February that they reported on it. The nanny had said in her statement, and this is just little pieces of it, it's a pretty long statement. It appeared that only Lori and JJ lived there from the look of things and from what she had told me. Remember, she remarked that she had a daughter, but she didn't live with them.
Right.
He, being JJ, had a room upstairs, but from what I remember, it was all toys and it had no bed. Lori's room appeared normal. She had a large bed, bathroom, and it looked clean. Although something kind of strange was that there was a small mattress in the corner where JJ slept. It was pretty thin, the size of a twin mattress with sheets and a pillow. From last time we reported on this, some people had mentioned that they do this too with their special needs kids if they are worried about them, you know, falling out of bed or something like that. So totally get it. If that's normal, sure. But what's not normal is where would Tylee sleep if that was the only thing there. She moved in with her new BFF she just met 3 days ago. Like, not 3 days ago, but, you know, she wasn't there that long. So just very weird to me. And the stories don't match up then. I want to see what this perfectly set up bedroom is and what was in it and where Tylee's stuff was. Any other things to add to that?
Not to that, no.
So then she also mentions again that they were getting threats from Kay and others.
Now, in parts, not to interrupt, in parts 2 and 3, Kay is like the head threatener in chief, becomes the primary issue. Like, Melanie keeps nailing that home over and over again.
Yeah, she makes sure to sprinkle her name in there a couple times. I wonder who the others are. Like, who else outside of Kay? Is it, I know someone had mentioned Kay's brothers at one point, and again, I I understand. They would be super angry and sad and just hurt that their brother got shot, right? Understandable, totally get it. But what I don't understand is if they are trying to get back at Lori, then if it's just like this custody thing, I feel like if Lori provided them with a good bedroom and, you know, he was going to school and he had a service dog and he had all the things to meet all of his needs, I don't see where the worry comes from.
Right, exactly.
I mean, he didn't have all that, obviously, in Rexburg, but before that, why they moved to Rexburg. Anyways, so Nate then tries to ask if any conversation about the kids ever happened. And he says it in a nice way. He's like, your kids come up, you know, in conversation with anyone you speak to, pretty much. And then she goes into, Lori brought up JJ's friends in the complex, but didn't really answer the question.
It was really bizarre. She launches into this entire tirade about JJ was a very high energy child and he would just kind of rush at people and go into their homes, and he had certain friends that were okay with it and loved him, and God, he was such a wonderful child, and Lori would tell me all about his friends and tell me cute little story. I mean, she completely bypassed the question entirely.
Well, I went back because I'm like, maybe I missed something, because she just goes in about the friends and doesn't say anything about any other real conversations. So I was like, okay, nope. She just went on about his friends. I don't know where his friends are, I guess. She did say, like, I brought up what Tylee was doing when I visited, or something along those lines. Like, she brought it up to Lori. And Lori would say she's out with friends and we're doing anything we can to protect the kids from Kay. Kay is causing a lot of trouble right now. She didn't want to get into too much of their custody deal. If she was going for custody, has there been any papers or, you know, court documents or anything released about custody before the move?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Because I was like, maybe I missed something big. But I didn't see anything.
Their attorneys, so the family attorneys in another interview state that Kay herself made left threatening voicemails and text messages to Lori, that they have that as literal evidence that Kay was threatening and harassing them. Whether that is true or not, I have no idea. But it is very clear that the whole family now is a unified front against the Woodcocks.
Right. So then he says, like, when did you find out about the investigation about, you know, the kids missing? And she talks about how detectives came to her door in November asking who lived next door. And then he's like, that's when he found out. And she's like, oh, no, I found out. And this is a weird story. And again, I went back too and listened to this again too, because it made no sense to me. She said when she was driving down to Arizona, she was going, you know, to Thanksgiving with Ian's family. She said Detective Ball texts that someone broke into her house and to call right away, right? Now, if you got that text, what would you do?
Stop everything, pull over, and reply and figure out what was going on.
Exactly. That's what I would do, but not to her. She seemed, you know, I got the impression she just didn't care. And she said, like, I'm spending time, what did she say? Something about, like, I'm spending time with the people I love, and, you know, like, if they took my stuff, just the way that she said it, that's not how anyone would react if someone were to text you. And also, what detective texts people this instead of calling to have a conversation? And it wasn't anyone that, like, broke in, like, it wasn't a burglar. She later found out that Rexburg police had took her stuff. So this entire story here sounds very sketchy to me.
Let me add on another layer of sketchiness. Did you notice at this point in the interview that she and Ian gave conflicting statements about what had
driving?
Happened? About driving?
Yeah. Yeah. And I thought they clarified it right after and said, oh, and then I met up with him or something.
I mean, that's really weird, though, because she did say we were driving down. She didn't say I was driving down to meet him and I, you know, blah, blah. She said we are driving down. It could have just been a slip, but I took that, and based also on her reaction, as being kind of a slip of the tongue.
Right. Well, I think she clarified it, but I'd have to go back. I was more focused on if your stuff got stolen or someone texts you that, I'd freak out, you know? And then she says she went to talk to detectives when she returned. And again, if I'm driving to Thanksgiving with my, brand new boyfriend, I feel like I would turn around and be like, all right, I need to go home. What the hell is happening to my house?
Right?
I can meet them at, Christmas or whatever. There's another holiday coming pretty quick.
Oh man, does she push that? She really put that front and center. I told the detective that I'm with people that I love, and that's far more important than material things.
Another thing that I noticed, so just based off of her story, right? So remember, and help me if maybe I misinterpreted something, Robin, but she mentioned before that she told him, like, I don't have anyone to spend Thanksgiving with. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So it sounded like he invited her semi last minute, correct? Like, that's the impression you got?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if it was totally last minute, unexpected, and then that would have been 2019, right? That was been last year. Thanksgiving fell on November 28th. What happened the next day? Alex got married on the 29th of November, and I have their marriage certificates in front of me. And then the 30th, November 30th, 2019.
2 days later.
Yeah, is when they went and got married. And now Vegas is very, very close, depending on where they were staying in Arizona. I don't know where his family lives, but it's, a quick drive. So you're telling me they went to Thanksgiving and then went and got married. So Thanksgiving wasn't like a pre-planned thing, like ahead of time. I feel like there has to be some planning to go on a road trip that long and then, on the way home, just stop and get married real quick.
So my speculation on that is I have two potential theories. One, Melanie had been having an affair with Ian for a while, right? Didn't want it coming out in her custody battle. I'm not sure about the laws in Arizona of how that works if your spouse commits adultery, how that would affect a divorce proceeding. However, I do believe that she knew Ian for a lot longer, at least a year before they got married. Or two, maybe she didn't know Ian beforehand and Chad assigned them to get married together. I'm not sure which one, but regardless, I can tell you that we are not getting the accurate story.
Right. Well, remember, it was just a dating app. But I just looked because I am in Arizona, so I looked at where I am, at least, through Google Maps to see how to get to Rexburg. And it is a pretty easy way to just go up to Vegas first. So that trip from Arizona to Rexburg is roughly about 14 hours.
It's just really incredible how when Ian was discussing it in the interview, it was, oh, well, I was going down to see my family. And he very much paints it that they were just in the early stages of dating. And I asked her what she was doing, and, she didn't have anybody to go to Thanksgiving with. So I was like, okay, well, you can come have it with my family and meet my children and so forth. And she was like, okay, last minute she decided to come. It was very almost like, that weird stage when you're just initially dating someone in the earliest stages. That's how Ian framed it. So if that's the case, they got married 2 days later.
Well, that's my interpretation. Is just they went to this like Thanksgiving dinner with the family, which, okay, that makes sense. If you have no one to go to, that's kind of standard. You invite other people, right? But then it's like, oh yeah, and we're getting married in 2 days, and none of his family came that I know of. I mean, I guess they could have secretly been there. But Alex signed the thing, or the marriage certificate, and then also, if they were so close, why didn't they go early to be at Alex's wedding? Just, there's so many weird things that I don't understand about it. And it could just be maybe they planned the wedding the moment they met. I don't know. And then it was just like, oh, well, Arizona's closer. It would be a, faster drive to Vegas since we're going to do it there. I don't know. But it just seems really weird.
So also, I did see in a group that multiple people, especially when this case started to break, before a Vow's website was taken down, got paid logins, right? They went beyond the paywall and got access to the forums. And apparently, Ian Pawlowski was a paying active member of the Avow forum. So Avow also worked closely with Preparing a People, and Ian is very, 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 very into prepping. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like more stuff about Ian is going to come out soon, just because he's all over everything, and now that he looks like he's lost the will to do anything, like, it's just coming. He knows it's coming.
I had to post it, the double screenshot from the 2 interviews that I posted on our Instagram and Facebook. That man has utterly lost the will to live at this point.
Well, wouldn't you? You're just like, oh man, my choices are bad. And then they talk about his document. So speaking of Ian, he says it was written for Melanie's lawyers so that they would know what he had told the FBI.
I call bullshit.
Yeah. Says he shared everything that he heard and what he was afraid of, thought the kids were in danger, and that something dark and sinister was going on. That does worry me. I mean, I'm glad that and again, who knows, he could be lying about everything, but let's say he's not. If he really thought these kids were in danger and this family was just lunatics and dark and sinister and all this, wouldn't you then wash your hands of it and be like, thank you for your time. Goodbye. But no, he just, I guess, I don't really understand what changed, but he says that he regrets what he presented to the FBI because it blew things up more than it should have. And so just coming clean to Melanie, and then now he's no longer scared or worried. She just, I don't know, her. And he mentioned that, he talked to Summer and Janice too, or, he met them. I don't know what happened, if he met them or just talked to them. But when speaking with them about Lori and the experiences she's gone through, he started to see some reasoning behind what's going on. What could they possibly have told him that would change his mind about, the kids? Something dark and sinister might be going on. It's just, Lori's nice. She loves her kids. You know what? Changed my mind. Everything's fine.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong too, but the document itself, right? The really long one that we went over in depth about zombies and wizards and Harry Potter and all the crazy shit. Mm-hmm. So supposedly that document was kept by Ian, and Ian documented that between conversations with Chad, Lori, and then Melanie explaining things, right? Mm-hmm. Why? And then he left it on the computer. He didn't do anything. He supposedly didn't notify his wife that it was even there. She supposedly found it at random.
His ex-wife.
Right, Natalie, his ex-wife. Mm-hmm. So when he delivered the computer. So are we supposed to believe that he sat down and wrote that for her lawyers and then didn't even notify her about it?
Their stories are just very strange, and they don't always add up. Then Melanie starts talking about Charles, and he brought the dark versus light document to Melanie's home. Remember these people are light, these people are dark, and the numbers and the whole ranking system. Mm-hmm. And she just said, he started being odd when Lori started asking questions about what he had done. So, that was his way of maybe getting back to her, is my interpretation of it. Says Charles and Brandon unraveled, and they were following the same pattern of just we're nice, we're great, and then if you question me, then we lose it, right? Is that the interpretation you got from what she was saying?
Kind of, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then she touches on Summer asking Alex to go to Lori's when Charles came over, and again, we already talked about that last time. And she mentions Brandon and Adam said Charles was murdered by Alex, told her at one point. So I don't know when Adam started getting involved more or where he was when all of this is happening, but now his name is coming up. So, and that's the brother, I believe, that Charles had emailed before too. So I wonder if he was just wait, what? And then, oh, he's dead?
Yeah, I don't know how that transpired, but yes, that is the brother that Charles had started to correspond with.
Mm-hmm. So she brought his name up, and that's the first time, at least in an interview, that I've heard his name said. So I don't know if maybe he'll be coming into light soon to talk about I'm thinking maybe him and Melanie's dad will be the next ones up.
I hope so. I really, really, really want to hear what Melanie's dad has to say, because part of me wonders if he knows the real deal.
Mm-hmm. And that's pretty much all the stuff that I got from the second part of these interviews. So again, part 3 was just at the bottom of his article. So they were both released at the same time. And this one starts with Charles being shot in self-defense. And Melanie believes so. And then start talking about how Tylee was brave and explained everything. And she mentioned how she was glad that Alex was there to protect Tylee.
And then she reiterated the bat scenario.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I still want to know more about the bad, I think, and just I want to hear them all say the story and be able to compare them all like back to back to back of what happened. I'm sure everyone's thinking the same thing, but it bothers me. She did remark on Lori smiling and laughing and just said, you know, that's the way that she handled shock, and everyone reacts differently. And that is true. Like, some people get really nervous and they start getting laughy and silly.
That's also how I handle shock. So that would not be
right. And Tylee being there, wasn't her arms crossed too, like next to Lori as she's like cackling.
Yeah.
So just so weird altogether. So then she talks about Charles and how he sold life insurance and texts between people. And I didn't really understand what she was talking about there. And it almost looked like a setup. I was kind of confused what she was even trying to say.
Is this when she was insinuating that Charles was cheating on her?
I think in the same conversation, if I remember right. But I think she was trying to allude to like maybe Charles was up to no good too. But it didn't really come out correctly. At least to me, my interpretation, it didn't really make a lot of sense.
Well, don't forget that the family has already stated that Charles threatened Lori's life.
Right.
So this could be more of them trying to
and if there's texts, and if they sent, let's say he did, right? Let's say he sent Lori these texts, and the family knows about them. Obviously, she screenshotted them or told them, hopefully screenshotted, so that is out there somewhere. But, I mean, I don't see any proof of that.
No, because there isn't any. In the public sphere, at least.
Right. And then Melanie talks about the zombie idea. So everyone's favorite idea here. And that it came from an old friend of Lori's right after they took off to Hawaii. So I wonder what friend she's talking about. Yeah, I guess the friend said Lori and Alex did something to Tylee and JJ, and we don't know where they're at. And Lori has lied to you. She says, like, all these things didn't feel right. On that phone call, I felt a lot of fear and doubt. And that's when I went to the worrying phase. So then that's when she went on to say Lori and Chad aren't the ones that told her the things in the document, that she heard it from other people. And I'm like, who are saying these things then? Like, Lori's friends are just calling out of the blue and talking about zombies and how the kids have disappeared and they know more about what's going on than the family does.
But that completely contradicts what Ian Pawlowski himself said in the document, supposedly, that he claims he wrote to attorneys.
Well, he say a lot of it he got from Melanie, and Melanie now is claiming, oh, Lori and Chad didn't tell me this random person did.
But in some of Ian's documents, he specifies that Melanie believed it, and that she was so wrapped up and believed it, and that that's what actually scared him, and also for his children too. So which is it, Ian? Because you can't really make those wildly different claims.
I just don't understand why he didn't, if he is so nice and not part of any of this, why didn't he get out when he was writing that document? Like, I'd be like, this person's nuts.
Right.
I don't want my kids part of this. Goodbye. Right. And if he mentioned the possibly dark and sinister things were happening, that's your exit sign, buddy.
Yeah, that's where you get the fuck out.
Mm-hmm.
I truly do not believe that Ian is innocent in this. I mean, my own personal speculation and beliefs is that he was involved with Chad before Melanie even moved to Rexburg.
I'm starting to feel that way too, just because his actions don't reflect what he's saying.
So something that really stood out to me is next, Nate asks Melanie, they talk about the LDS church, and then Nate asks Melanie if she and Ian or Lori and Chad were in a, quote, fringe group. So they basically explain how the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has, its own traditional doctrine, and that anybody outside who subscribes to, preaches, anything like that, beliefs outside of it are considered fringe groups and they're not accepted. And that you can be excommunicated if you are part of it. And then Nate says, Melanie, if you, and Ian or Lori and Chad were in a fringe group. What I found interesting is that Melanie and Ian, the family's lawyers, Garrett and Smith, immediately muted the computer, like the Zoom
Yes.
call. I mean, immediately, all of a sudden, fucking bam, mute. And then they counseled her. So we see Melanie nod her head and say, okay, okay, okay. She's being counseled by her attorney. And then the interview is unmuted and she replies, no. And then she, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, what were they like? What would she have said had they not muted it and said, "Don't say this"?
They were worried about the way that she's going to answer that question.
Mm-hmm. And what could she have possibly said wrong? You know, like, yes, they were. I don't think she would have said that, but I'm very, very curious what she would have said.
Yeah.
Then she talks about a couple things that are in scriptures and how you want to learn more about the mysteries of God. And then this is kind of where it ends, though. These are things to learn about, but there are no beliefs that I have or that I know Chad and Lori have that are against the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints or anything inconsistent with that faith. I mean, she does specifically mention translation. And then she says, you know, this is not what we believe. And she made sure to say the names, Chad and Lori. So with that being said, though, if they don't believe that, I don't understand. You know, like, that makes no sense to me because she literally said, I mean, I guess I haven't heard it out of her mouth, but in the divorce documents, she mentioned crazy stuff like that, right?
Mm-hmm, yes.
And yeah, so in this conversation, she brings up translation. She says, we don't have information on it. It's something that's talked about in scriptures. And these are things that are interesting, and you want to learn more about the mysteries of God, and no one really has the answers on. And then, yeah, when she says that they're not believing in that, and they don't go against the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints, then my question then is if, like, Chad follows the standard teachings of the church, then none of this would really be happening, right?
That is true, but this has been confirmed by many, 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 many Mormons, members who are active in the Mormon church, is that the church turns a blind eye to a lot of these fringe groups. They know that they exist. They're not out there like the fringe group hunters out there on the prowl for these groups, and if they find you in one, they immediately excommunicate you. They vastly turn a blind eye to it.
With that being said, I was confused because I thought I had read before that Chad was excommunicated, but I can't find a legitimate source. So it was just a rumor, I think, that I had read. But I did find an article from Fox 13 where Julie Rowe commented on, he has not yet been, but I'm sure he will be. And in that same article, it talks about how Julie Rowe was excommunicated from the Church of Jesus Christ and Latter-day Saints in 2019, partially because her willingness to discuss her beliefs in multiple probations.
Right. And don't forget, too, that Nate Eaton confronted Melanie about the light versus dark. He said, so Melanie, do you believe that, you know, the kids just randomly go dark? And do you want to talk about that? And she was like, oh, well, as Mormons and members of the LDS Church, we believe that doing good things increases your light and doing bad things increases your darkness. So she totally tried to explain away that piece.
I noticed that. That was, I mean, from what she's saying, if it was written like that, sure. But no, it's written on a weird scale.
Yeah.
So explain that away. They did 2 good things that week. So they're a 2L?
But yet, small, you know, a 17 or 16-year-old girl can, what, go evil?
Right. It makes absolutely no sense. And just the fact that she claims that they just follow the standard teachings when a big discussion in this has been that they weren't.
Right.
So, okay.
So the next piece that was really interesting to me is that Melanie said that the Woodcocks weren't big parts of JJ's life. I mean, she really shit all over them about how they weren't there. JJ doesn't even really know them. And I'm like sitting there stunned as I watch it, like, bitch, where did hundreds of photographs come from then of the Woodcocks with JJ? I mean, I have seen no less than probably 40 myself of different trips, different instances of the Woodcocks being with JJ. So I'm not exactly sure how Melanie can literally sit there and say that JJ didn't even know him. It's like,
right. Well, I'm wondering if maybe they weren't part of his day-to-day life and maybe she just misspoke.
Oh no, she doubled down and said that they never saw him. that he didn't even know them. They never saw him. And like that is actually, there's no misinterpretation there. That's just factually untrue.
Well, for her to speak on this and know so much about JJ, I thought they were all always doing their own thing all the time. So maybe she just had no clue and she just chose to answer it that way. I know she's lying, she has to be lying on that, but I'm just saying like the other side of it. And then the lawyer steps in again. So the lawyer had to step in twice. Nate then asks, do you think they're safe? Chad said they were safe. We don't know what that means, but do you think they're safe in a bunker somewhere? Then the lawyer again cuts it off and he's like, I need to modify this a bit. And then basically says the premise of it being that they haven't seen anything in Lori's life to give them evidence that she would harm the children. I was just like, why can't she just answer that question? Like she could simply say, yes, I think they're safe. I have no reason to believe otherwise, but he made sure to step in. And then he goes on to continue to say the same things that we keep hearing from all of them. She wouldn't harm the kids. She moved to protect the kids. And Lori has distrust of the system because of its failure to protect her own kids. And I'm like, when did the system technically fail her before? Do you know what they're talking about? Like, when did the system fail her?
I'm assuming possibly that she's referring to the abuse allegations with Joseph Ryan about how he molested both Tylee and Colby. Apparently that really kind of sparked Lori's disdain for the system because she spoke constantly about how the system failed her. So that's what I'm going with.
And if that was, let's say that all of that happened and that was super true, like that is horrible. But also a custody battle is a bit different than that,
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to like downplay that. If that did happen, that's really, really sad for the whole family. But I feel like this is a whole different realm. But after he goes into the same three things that everyone keeps saying over and over and over again, Melanie does finally step up and say the bigger question is, instead of where are the kids, we should be asking, why does Lori feel the need to protect her kids? And from who? From what? And I'm like, yeah, from who? From what? Why take that from Lori like nothing? Like, if she's like, I have to protect my kids, you go, okay, let's protect them. Yes, anything you do, I won't ask. I won't think about it. If you're family and you're so close, wouldn't you go, all right, tell me everything. What do we got to do? What's going on with these kids? At least that's how I would react, right?
That's how I would react too.
Yeah, like, what's going on? Who's going after them? Why are they going after them? We want me to take them for a little bit, just... I don't know. It just seems so weird that it's only from Kay, the way that they keep trying to present it. It's just Kay. Kay is crazy and
it's all Kay. They don't even really bring Larry into it. It's just all Kay.
Yeah, I don't know. And at one point they say in others, and I'm like, who are these others? Who are these other magical people that are interested in getting these kids? But the lawyer then goes after Kay again. He references a news clip and says that Kay said she never threatened Lori. And then at the end, she mentioned that she had some phone calls and emails where she said some pretty mean things. But she just really wants to see JJ. He pretty much said, okay, yes, she did threaten Lori, and this is kind of where she mentions it slightly. Again, I don't get it. If those emails are there, I feel like those should already have come up. Everything else is coming up. All these weird chat emails are coming up. If Kay is realistically this really horrible, bad person that threatened children, then wouldn't you think that email would have been brought up already? So then people stop freaking out?
You would think that the family would get that out into public view as soon as possible.
Right. So, okay. But again, if it's all because of Kay and she's really protecting these kids and these kids love their mother and she's a wonderful mother, then her sitting in jail away from these kids for months now, I don't see how that's justified because she doesn't trust the system. Because then you're harming the kids yourself. So I just don't buy any of this story.
No, it's true. I probably could have gone into the bathroom and had a bowel movement, and that would have been more important than anything Melanie and Ian had said in either 3 series of these interviews with Nate Eaton.
Well, I didn't even know if Ian was realistically awake for half of them.
He was not cognizant.
He's just playing with that water bottle. He's just like, okay, like, is this over yet? Can we please leave? Please let me go home, Melanie.
Well, I've been watching a lot of, actually I went down the rabbit hole of this the last few nights, is CIA agents and FBI agents who are behaviorists. And they discuss different body language things and elements of how you can detect people who are lying, right? So one piece is self-soothing. If someone's really uncomfortable, they always have a physical behavior where they try to self-soothe. And you can actually see Melanie do this the entire interview. She has one arm, like her left arm draped over her right arm, and she's just constantly stroking her arm.
Interesting.
Like, yeah. So if you watch the interview, you'll see her like hold her arm, and then at times she'll start petting herself. And that is definitely textbook. Even I saw an FBI behaviorist discuss it and show that exact same movement. That is considered self-soothing. So it's basically she was in distress, even if she was coming off calm, cool, and collected.
Well, that makes sense. Their stories aren't matching up. It seems very weird, and just the places that the lawyer had to interject, I thought was very strange. And then
very telling.
Yeah, for sure.
So Melanie claims too, another piece that was really odd, since lest we not forget, Lori has been talking to Summer frequently. We know this because we saw the call logs in one of the affidavits. Lori was Melanie's mother figure, so close to Lori. Aunt Lori, everything is Lori. Melanie claims the last time that she spoke to Lori was the second week of December. Why hasn't she been talking to Lori if they were so close? Because if you look at Lori's call logs, she's on the phone for like hours a day.
Well, my guess is that she stopped talking to her then, because Ian mentioned in one of these interviews that he had told Melanie on December 19th that he was talking to the police.
So isn't that incriminating in itself?
Like maybe just distancing themselves from it? Yeah. Because
I feel like everyone is scrambling like a cockroach because they know that they're going to be indicted as a co-conspirator.
Maybe. I mean, that would make sense why she's not talking to her mother figure that she had such a big bond with. And then he pretty much just ends it and is like, is there anything else? And they talk about how they're worried about their own custody battles.
In that tie-up, they did not one single time mention JJ or Tylee. It was this, Ian said something to the effect with, I wish that, of anyone, I wish and we wish that this would just come out into the open, the truth would reveal itself, because I want to get back to my own life and get my kids back and focus on our custody battles. And this is just ruining our lives. And why is my ex-wife Natalie and Melanie was like, why is Brandon, why are they now scared of us having access to our children, and la 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 la.
There's a lot of reasons that you should be near children.
More than one.
Because you don't even notice when some disappear in front of you. No, I get it, that they're worried about their own kids. Sure, I get it. But also the reason why you don't have access to your children right now is because you're involved in something where there are kids that are missing. And both of their sets of children are safe from what we understand. From what we know, they're safe. They're not in any danger. Family does know where they are, and the police aren't looking for them. So again, I understand the bond that you have with your kid and you want to be near them, but also you made a lot of choices to make sure that you're not seeing your kids. Like, she left them here instead of fighting for this custody or whatever. She literally got up and moved. So sure, Melanie. This whole interview with her, I was just so angry at her and how the stories were matching and how she claims to care so much, yet she pretty much says that she didn't notice or care about anything happening ever.
That's true.
On my searches for some of the information this week, I did see that another website was shut down. And it looks like Pathway to Zion was another message board that was associated with Chad Daybell and his followers. And it shut down out of fear that its members could be excommunicated. So I thought that was kind of interesting that there's more now, that are like shutting down and like, no, don't post here. No, we never did anything.
No, that is interesting. And I would also like to close with, because we have been discussing Nate Eaton's interview. Now, Amanda and I watched it, right? We watched the actual YouTube interviews, the speaking ones. Ask yourself why Melanie and the family refused Justin Lum. They flat out refused and insulted Justin Lum. We will not have anything to do with you. Why do you think they picked Nate Eaton? I was a little skeptical. I'm like, okay, so what is Nate Eaton's been covering it the exact same way, you know, almost with very little bias. I had no issue with Nate Eaton. He's just been, you know, reporting the news. The physical transcript, the written transcript of the interview with Melanie and Ian has been edited. The transcript that you can go to eastidahonews.com, Nate Eaton promised that he would not touch it, that it would be raw, unedited, and untouched. That has proven to be false. Nate has since admitted that he lightly edited the transcript. Not only did he lightly edit the transcript, he changed fucking wording on it. From one, Melanie would say something in the actual video, and then Nate would literally re-summarize it in a different way. So, in my opinion, I mean, I'm just putting this out there publicly, Nate Eaton and East Idaho News is either compromised or they have an agenda. I do not understand, but they are canceled, in my opinion.
Well, I was looking at some, and I will say that I did catch it a couple times, but the ones that I caught were pretty minor. It was me trying to get a quote and, you know, listening to it and then finding it in the written part, just trying to figure out where I was. And I did notice a couple things, but some of it too was when Melanie kind of mumbled and she just said like gibberish almost, and then like kept going back and trying to re-say her sentence again. I noticed that, but I wasn't reading through it at the same time as like watching it. So it was only when I was trying to find a quote.
Yeah, multiple groups now. I would say probably 4 different groups have actually, if you're in multiple of the Facebook groups, have actually picked the transcript apart, and he did it all the way through.
And it was him that did this, not an editor?
That's unknown. I know that people have been emailing and messaging Nate, and Nate did admit to, quote, lightly editing the transcript. That's all that's been said. Maybe worth it emailing East Idaho News and being like, hey, who did this? Who's responsible? You know, something. I would assume it would probably be an editor.
That would be my assumption. Yeah, that's why I'm like, would he actually sit there and do all of this? Or because it is a lot of writing.
Yeah, it's a lot of writing. But yeah, Nate Eaton came out and said that they wouldn't edit, and lo and behold, it is edited to holy hell. So if you do want to see her interview, try if you can to watch it.
That's all we have for the interviews with Melanie and Ian, but we do have a really fun interview about the autopsy.
We do. So as we mentioned earlier, we spoke with Iris, a friend of the show who was an autopsy technician for years, and she decided to speak with us to give her expertise and to kind of answer some questions that we had. And it's a very, very, very informative discussion.
Yeah, for sure. I learned a lot, and then just getting to ask questions that I had highlighted was awesome.
So we're going to go ahead and air our interview with Iris now. So Iris, I know you've been following this case as well, and we want to thank you so much for taking the time to come on and talk about the results, because we need some help here.
For sure. Well, I'm happy to help. And thank you for asking me on. This is very exciting.
We were actually, remember back when we did the Elisa Lam case, we discussed having you on then so we could talk about results. And you said the next time there's some sort of autopsy or forensic results type of situation to reach back out to you. And sorry about your luck.
No, hey, this is good.
So tell everyone about yourself, other endeavors that you have in the podcasting world, and let them get to know you a little bit.
I'm Iris. Hello. And so I have been working in an autopsy technician way, I guess, or in that field. I worked for it about 7 to 8 years. And I got to see some interesting stuff. Some stuff was horrific, of course. Other stuff was very sad to think how we treat each other as humans. Yeah, and then I moved to Washington, and I've been here for 21 years, and ta-da. Podcasting-wise, I used to do something with 2 other guys, and we used to do exploitation films, and you can find that. I mean, it's exploitationfilmpodcast.com if you care to go see. And then once in a while, I will be on with Gary Hill, and it's called the Cinema Beef podcast. And we just do 2 movies that kind of have a theme, and we just have fun with it. So basically it for me.
Nice. What everyone wants to know is, what are some of the worst and craziest things that you have witnessed in this line of work?
Oh, okay. So worst, I have to say it has to deal with kids. There was one where a 3-year-old presented to the children's hospital, and the aunt was saying, yeah, she fell from the top bunk, but the child was in a coma for a couple of days. When she ended up in the pit, and that's what we called it because the cops would call us ghouls, so we would call our autopsy theater the pit. When she ended up in the pit, as we were examining, we saw that she had been, pierced with, you know what you use corn cobs? What you pierce corn cobs with? She had wounds that presented on her legs, and on her back, and on her arms. She had some hair that had been completely pulled off of her scalp.
Oh my gosh.
You know, patches and just bruises and things like that. And basically it was determined that the child had basically been beaten to death.
Oh no.
That she had fallen from the top bunk. Yeah, so that's one of the worst ones. Another one was, again, a child. Another 3-year-old, and I don't understand why a parent would do this. And this guy was a nurse, okay? Mm-hmm. He grabbed a 3-year-old in this technique hold that some little cult of his that he was in.
Did you say cult?
Yeah, you know, it was one of those hybrid religions.
Oh.
Like, you know, cult to me. So he had grabbed the 3-year-old and had this technique hold that they were using so the child would present hidden angers. What kind of fucking hidden angers can a 3-year-old have, please? And basically the baby asphyxiated because he was holding her too hard. And yeah, she died because daddy was holding her. A nurse who should have known better.
Right. That's horrible too.
But, you know, where we were at the time where I was, in the city that I was in, there was also a high, the Mexican cartel had moved in.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, at the time, it was very new, so there was a lot of gang-related shootings, but I think one of the weirdest one, I mean, it was like straight out of the movie. The guy was wrapped in a carpet. He was completely duct taped in it, and somebody had tossed it into a pond.
Oh my god.
Into a body of water near the airport. Yeah, unwrapping that was fun because you had been in the water for a while. And I think the coolest one, and this will be my last one, the coolest one I do remember was there was a fisherman that went missing, and he was found in one of the canals. So they fished him out. We had to fish him out. And so nobody knew how to identify this guy because he had been in for about a week. So what the medical examiner did was he took his hand and did kind of like just an incision around his wrist, and we were able to pull the skin off kind of like a glove. So he wore the guy's basically epidermis as a glove and was able to get prints.
What?
To be able to identify him afterwards.
Oh.
I think that was one of the
My
coolest things I had seen. I know, it was just amazing. I was like, wow. You know, I had never seen that. And then, you know, of course, years later, I'm watching CSI, and they're like, oh, this is a new thing that we can do. I was like, seen it for reals.
Oh my god, so he degloved a guy's hand and then wore it to get prints?
To get prints, yeah. It was pretty amazing.
That's crazy.
And, you know, luckily it was very cold water, so, you know, the body didn't start deteriorating as, like, let's say if it was out in Florida. But yeah, he was able to pull prints. He was able to pull 3 viable prints off of the guy.
Wow.
That's crazy.
He had dentures, so pulling records through teeth, yeah, but it was a lot quicker just to go through the fingerprints.
That's crazy.
Yeah, this is kind of crazy, creepy things, and pulling bodies from under mobile homes and things like that. Yeah, you get to do all kinds of cool things.
So you've seen a lot, is what we're getting at then.
Yeah, and it's like really weird because the first bodies I had seen was probably in Desert Storm, so. I was like, it wasn't like a big deal. And then I was going to go into nursing, and we did a round in the morgue. And I was like, I kind of like it down here. I can't hurt anyone. They're all dead. So I kind of switched it, and I kind of switched my major into autopsy tech.
So we have a lot of questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, please. I mean, I have some questions too. Oh, and I have a bombshell to drop. I'm sorry. When I saw something, I was like, what?
Okay. I'm pretty excited now. Let's get into it.
My interest is piqued.
One of our theories could get totally blown.
No.
With the Visine. Yes. It depends on how well county medical examiner's office has funding.
Probably not. Yeah, I live in Maricopa County. Probably not.
Okay, well then. Oh, so interesting. I am interested. Since you live there, do they have a coroner?
I believe so. I mean, I guess I never hang out with them or anything, but...
It was just interesting because, you guys do know the difference between a medical examiner and a coroner, right?
Yes. Do you want to explain that to the listeners, though, just so everyone is aware?
A coroner is a elected official and comes with a budget and an office. So it could be a doctor, but it also could be Joe Blow, who drives the hearse for one of the local mortuaries.
Mm-hmm.
So the knowledge of somebody can be as of, that guy is dead because he looks dead and he's not moving, to a doctor going, he died of this, and this. So that is your coroner. Medical examiner is a doctor who has basically specialized in pathology, and the medical examiner can sign a death certificate, but it is not official until the coroner has signed it.
Oh, okay.
So that's basically the difference between the two.
That's really interesting, yeah. So Iris, looking currently at the medical examiner report for Alex Cox, and it begins with findings, and there are points 1 through 6. Of these 6, and do you find anything out of the ordinary on the findings 1 through 6? 1 being what they believe he died from, which was a bilateral pulmonary thromboemboli.
Well, actually, I had a quick question before that even. So right at the beginning, so it says, who died, when the date of the examination and stuff. And now persons present at the examination, they had detectives Ryan Pillar and Nolan McDermott, and then the FBI agent Carrie Cooper was also there. Is that pretty standard?
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, if somebody thinks that there has been a criminal activity has caused the death, yes, you're going to have detectives there. The Federal Bureau of the FBI, though, no.
Okay.
I have never been one with an FBI agent there.
Now, what Robin just said. Sorry. I was like, how many people are in this room when they're doing this? Like, are they there just to watch and see how it's done? Like, I feel like they don't have the background knowledge on what even is happening. They could tell them anything and they'd be like, sure.
Right. No, usually what it is like, let's say, they're like interested to see, like, well, we want to know if there was any blood trauma or there was anything like that on the body. So they will stick around for so long as to see, okay, so my questions were answered. Okay, I'm leaving. Bye.
Okay.
That's basically it. Okay. Sometimes some of them stay all the way around. Sometimes, most of the time they don't.
Okay. Thank you.
So on the first page of the report, it says cause of death, bilateral pulmonary thromboemboli. And you've been following the case as well, pretty closely. Mm-hmm. So what we know about Alex is middle-aged, tiny. The report says he was a little overweight. Does anything stick out to you at first glance just at the bilateral pulmonary thromboemboli? Like, what assumptions did you make when you read that as the cause of death?
Basically, when I saw that, it was like, okay, so he had a bunch of blood clots. So the first thing I thought was, well, did he have pneumonia? Was he having issues with breathing? But then when I went to the number 2, you see hypertensive. And so it's like, okay, so the guy could have had like some sort of heart attack or a cardiac issue, which could have pumped blood clots into his lungs, and that's how he died. Mm-hmm. So, that's basically what I was seeing here. But being that I have a little bit of background on this case, I'm like, what could have caused that? And of course, my brain starts going, and, I was thinking tetrahydrozine. That's where my brain went, because, basically what it does to your system, your heart starts to slow down, and, you're going into bradycardia, as it's called. And if your heart gets to a point where it's going so slow, it can defib and cause a heart attack. Now, looking at this also, it could have been that it could have pushed something into his lungs, because, the way your heart pumps, it comes from your heart, comes, lungs, heart, the rest of the body, heart, back into the lungs. It's kind of interesting to see, could it been something? Because if one side get constricted more than the other, which is what, the Visine can do to you, it's kind of interesting to see that that's what happened. I don't know. That's where my head went first.
Now, in your work as an autopsy technician, did you ever see any poisonings? Did you ever work a poisoning? Like, one that actually showed up that, wasn't, like, nearly undetectable?
Mm-hmm. Oh, no, nothing like that. I mean, there was always arsenic or opioids, but nothing that was not detectable through, just the basic ELISA test or something.
And also in your work as an autopsy technician, you've told me that the liver toxicity report doesn't come standard in just a regular autopsy.
No, it does not. It's usually something that is requested, and most of the time, if there is, if there's a thought or there is evidence that there is a poisoning, then, they would do that. But there's also a test that they could do through gases, also to find if there had been poisons or any drugs or something in the body. Mm-hmm. So, either way you could do that. And that could be either through urine or through the viscera, which, could be pieces of, liver.
Right.
Biopsies and stuff like that.
Well, with the presence of, like, the FBI and detectives there, I mean, doesn't that already show that they thought there could potentially be foul play when you think that they would have ordered a bunch of extra tests, like tested for everything just in case?
I think it would. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of like, I think, the bomb that I was talking about, because at the very end, if you guys don't mind me going to the very end where the toxicity, the very last page, which is the gas chromatography. Mm-hmm. So basically the LCTOF, that would be able to detect if there was any of the Visine or any of that stuff in his blood. Uh-huh. But here's the thing. If they did not have a reference or something to reference that off of that test, it wouldn't come up.
Really?
Yeah. So if, like, let's say you're testing with the LC-TOF and, you have like 106 drugs and stuff that you can compare to reference. It's called a reference. But if they don't have a specific opioid or a specific drug or poison to test against or chemical, mm-hmm. then it's not going to show up. So if you don't have tetrahydrozoline as a reference in your LC-TOF, it wouldn't say, hey, we found this in the blood system.
Interesting. So in your opinion, looking at like the toxicology report, do you think it looks, scarce compared to normal ones? Or would you say this is pretty standard?
No, this is a pretty standard assay. It's very, very standard. I mean, you've got the electrolytes and glucose panels. You got the alcohol and blood forensics, enzymes, especially the immunoabsorbent assay, the ELISA. That's very, very typical.
Mm-hmm.
So I found it interesting though that they did do the LC-TOF. Back in my day, that was not something that was typically done because it was too fucking expensive. So, and it wasn't something that everybody had. If your state or your county had a lot of money, yeah, you would have a machine, but, it wasn't something that a lab would just have on hand. So, to me, it's kind of like a little interesting that that's there. It wasn't something that was typical for back in my day.
That's really interesting. So everything on this autopsy and toxicology, everything seems very standard and typical, Iris?
Yes, it does. It really does.
I have kind of another question then. So when one is doing one of these reports, how do they determine what tests to order versus not to order?
Well, it's pretty much a standardized process, especially with the toxicology. Because basically what you're going to do is you're going to open up the guy, you do the Y incision, you open him up, you start looking at the viscera, you start looking at where organs are. Do they look normal? Do they not look normal? You start weighing them, and then you just start going through each system. You go through the brain, then you go through the central nervous system, you're going to go through the gastric, kind of exactly how it's on this list. That's just basically how you go through it. And then like the toxicities and stuff like that, they're basic tests and assays that you just have to order. So if, like, let's say the FBI guy wanted something else, then he would go, hey, how about if we do such and such test, like a liver toxicity test, and check for enzymes, then that would be done. Or you have urine, can we do, these tests for the urine? And I'd go, okay, so then we're going to set up these tests. So that's basically how it's done.
Okay, so like the person doing this report, I understand that they probably have no idea what this case is in regards to, and they're just doing the standard. But would you say then for like the police department and the FBI that were present that maybe they should have, in your opinion, they probably should have ordered a lot more then?
In my opinion, yeah, I would have. But, again, I have this bias that there's no way this is normal. So...
Well, I would feel like they would want to rule that out too and be like, okay, we just need a cut and dry case. He died of natural causes, but let's be sure. Let's order, everything that could possibly be it. But I do understand costs probably are high to order a ton of stuff. So.
But in an investigation where both FBI and police are present at an autopsy, you would think they would pull like almost full panels on everything.
Right, but you also have to remember the FBI agent could have walked away with specimens.
He did. I think at one point they say that he took something. Yeah, they said that he took something, and I was like, I think that was another question I had written down. Like, is that typical for them to take something with them?
A doggy bag?
So a blood blot. Well, yeah, kind of. It's a blood blot that was collected and released to the detectives at the time of examination. And it could be something either, they want to keep it just in case, because it's also standard on this report. It says that after a year, specimens will be destroyed, and after 5 years, the report will be, destroyed also.
So with that blood blot, could they then run some of these tests that are missing if they need it, or no?
Yeah, they could. They could do some more testing. I'm surprised they didn't take any urine and some of the liver tissue also, but.
Well, here's my question. If the testing overall, say, was incomplete for poisoning, right? How can they confidently state a manner of death? Is it just that the the cardiac issue is just so obvious in Alex that that's pretty much what they defaulted to, because I feel like there are many, 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 many chemicals that can cause a blood clot and cause a cardiac event. So I guess my ultimate question is, how are they so sure it was related to these, say, the bilateral pulmonary thromboemboli, the hypertensive cardiovascular disease? He had multiple liver cavernous hemangiomas, and a gastric polyp. So, like, all of these things, but, like, how would that tie in, say, if the FBI took tissue and then did a liver toxicology report and the FBI comes back and was like, this bitch was poisoned in some way? How will that affect this document at all? Like, can they post-mortem go back in? It will, okay.
Basically what they do was just an addendum and say that the FBI has found toxicology reports, blah, 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 blah. And it would be addended, and then the cause of death would be changed.
Have you seen that? I'm assuming that's not very common, but...
It's not very common, but I can give you an instance. In Georgia, there was a coroner who basically came in and said, the guy's wife called and said, oh, my husband just shot himself. People get there, yes, guy's dead. And the coroner comes in, he says, yep, suicide. So being that autopsies are expensive, the coroner decided that there was no need for an autopsy because, well, it comes out of his budget. So he said, suicide, just leave it alone. Done. The cops go, okay, suicide. But the guy's family's like, there's no fucking way this guy would have done this. There's no way. 7 years later, after investigating and having a private investigator looking through everything, there came a conclusion that it was the wife who killed the guy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So currently, I believe it was last year, she was in court, and I don't know what the findings of the court was, but I do know that the guy's report, his death certificate in the report got changed because it wasn't a death by blunt trauma, self-inflicted blunt trauma. It was, a murder. So, it does happen.
That's crazy. And so 7 years later, it was changed?
Yeah, 7 years later, it was changed.
I don't know if anyone has seen, or Iris, if you've seen, on Netflix, there's a documentary series called The Smiley Face Killer, or The Smiley Face Murders, rather. And there's very little stock in the theory, but basically law enforcement, retired FBI agents, and police believe that there is possibly a connection between all of these murders of young 20-something-year-old men who end up being found in bodies of water. Well, these two, one retired FBI agent and one retired New York City detective, they've been actually going case by case all over the country, and they've managed to get like 70% of the causes of death changed. From suicides, accidental drownings, to homicide.
Yeah, it does happen.
So it's really interesting how it does happen with further testing. So I wonder if maybe the FBI, I mean, it should be a red flag to everyone that the FBI was involved in this to begin with.
Right. Well, and it says, though, at the end, the evidence, they were released to one of the detectives. So it's still with Gilbert PD then.
It could be with Gilbert. Okay, so it could be with Gilbert PD, but if the FBI comes in and says, hey, you know that sample you've got, we need it. Being that the FBI...
of course, they'll share.
Well, they'll just take. It's not sharing, really, but...
Well, hopefully they've already done whatever tests they're hoping to do.
Yeah, and of course there's always that infighting between Bureau and local cops. They don't like each other, but still... Yeah, they'll come in, they'll take it and say, hey, we need that, we need to do some more testing. And there you go. And they also could be that they might be holding it because in case they need to tie Tammy to Alex, then the Rexburg Police Department can go to the Gilbert Police Department and go, hey, that sample you have? we need a little piece of that so we can do this test.
And so say they want to compare samples, right? Say that they, for Tammy's, which I truly honestly believe that they've completed Tammy Daybell's autopsy. And let me get your opinion on that.
Oh, heck yeah.
They exhumed her in when? December?
Mm-hmm.
Based on how, is it done? I mean, we're now going into May. Do you think that her autopsy is complete?
Oh, heck yes. There is no way that it couldn't be complete without the prosecutor doing what he wants to do right now. There is no way that they could say, murder conspiracy and all that other charges without having findings, from the autopsy.
Now, from what you've seen in, your own autopsy cases and whatnot, Alex died in December. So why are we just now getting it back in May? Does that usually indicate that there's some sort of criminal element possibly involved? Or I guess or does it just kind of run concurrent with the police investigation? I guess I'm wondering, and why I'm asking this question is, why did it take so damn long, and why is Tammy Daybell's autopsy still sealed?
More than likely, it is sealed because there is evidence, as in for Tammy's. So there's evidence there, so it has to be sealed. It cannot be public knowledge. Opinion can be tainted, so therefore, kind of like the whole thing with the Peterson case.
Like Lacey Peterson?
Yeah. That was basically, by popular demand, it was guilt. It wasn't like something that was really tried in the court. It was tried in public.
Yeah, it was tried in the court of public opinion. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you. That's why I think they're trying to keep everything under wraps, because if you have a savvy lawyer, which Lori doesn't have, thank God, he could use that against them. So therefore, those records are locked down. And plus, I'm sure just out of respect, they're also locked down. This one here isn't, because first of all, they're saying these are, there's no criminal element to it. There's no foul play. This guy died of natural causes.
We all have a confirmation bias because we know Lori, the cast of characters, what Alex is suspected of doing and being involved in. So I think that we all are going into his, and with a confirmation bias, especially.
Right.
But with Tammy's, and I said this in our last episode, I believe that, our view of Alex's death is kind of framed by Tammy's death. Mm-hmm. Have you seen foul play been determined in an autopsy? So say, for example, in Tammy's case, they find something, a poison or something to indicate that there was, in fact, homicide and foul play involved. Would they actually sit on that for months as they investigated?
Oh yeah, definitely. I've seen reports given to the prosecutor's office, and they sit on it for months, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to build a case around the narrative of the medical examiner's report. And I believe maybe that's what they're trying to do in Rexburg, is that they have the medical examiner's report, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to build a narrative around that.
Because I do recall the FBI came out and said, I believe it was through East Idaho News, it broke there, I believe, that the FBI has uncovered actual digital evidence of, I believe that their exact words were like sinister web, of indicating basically that they have Chad Daybell and, the rest of the merry band of idiots pretty much digitally discussing events and things that could possibly have led to Tammy's murder, is what they kind of insinuated lately. So
okay, so yeah, and that would totally make sense to me. But going back to Alex, I mean, the date of examination was 12/14/2019.
Right.
And now the report is being basically made public because I think probably because of demand. So I maybe people are trying to see it, and also how the FBI and police departments will kind of lull a criminal into thinking that they're safe by putting out misinformation.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
You know, this could be a little bit of something like that. They're like, well, you know, Alex Cox, oh, they didn't find anything on Alex, so we're safe, we're good. Don't worry about this. And then all of a sudden, boom, they hit them with something. So, you know.
Oh, that's true, too. And then...
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. That's perfect.
They, like, you know, throw the web and then watch for communications or, you know, different things like that.
Exactly.
Well, and certain websites have been shut down since this came out, too, I believe.
Vow and preparing people.
So, yeah, you know, it could be that, you know, this has been put out there because they're trying to get chatter going. So, you never know.
Now, another question for you, too, that I actually just spurred is, Tammy was exhumed. Have you ever performed an autopsy on a body that was exhumed?
Yes. There was an exhumation of a young lady. Well, we call it an exhumation. She had been buried for about 7 years. And the skeletal remains didn't give basically how she died because it was a sexual assault with blunt trauma. So there was nothing, like there wasn't skin or anything to show if there had been blunt trauma. There was no broken bones or anything. So the medical examiner couldn't say this is how she died. There was no viscera or anything because she had been left out in the open. Therefore, there was no way. But yes, I've seen somebody being exhumed, and it's a little disheartening. It's a little sad. Now, I have seen also somebody exhumed from a grave, and the reason why there could be viscera there, not just because it was a death that happened so, you know, recently, you know, more. See, she died in
2019. Mm-hmm. So she was only buried for 2 months, Amanda? October 19th, I believe, exactly.
Okay, so it hasn't been very long. So, depending on who's doing the embalming and stuff, I know for us, when we would have a body and we went ahead and did the medical examination, then the autopsy, basically once we were done with the autopsy and specimens were, you know, were taken, we would basically put all of the viscera, all the organs and everything back into a bio bag, and then it would be sewn up into the chest of the decedent.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's what we do. Because there are some people who believe that you can't be unwhole when you're buried. You have to be a whole person. So therefore, whatever we take out, we have to put back in. So therefore, it's put back into the chest, it's sewn up, and that's basically it. Once Tammy's stuff once she had been embalmed, and if her organs were placed inside a bio bag, then that's where the viscera would have been gathered from.
Now, would that have become like a primordial soup? Like what would have been in that bag 2 months later?
2 months later, it's just a big goo of congealed blood. It kind of like a petri dish, basically. It was just goo, primordial goo. Yeah.
That's interesting. So they definitely could have gotten some. Now, what about like liver toxicity? Would they have enough of a sample there to do a toxicity report? Say if tetrahydrolazine was involved.
Oh yeah, most definitely. They would have enough to be able to do a liver toxicity. Basically, what they do is just collect enzymes. So if they had goo and they could look for specific liver enzymes, they could figure it out. Yeah.
Okay, good. So I know a lot of people seeing in the groups were concerned that because she was exhumed that they would lose precious sample material, especially with more advanced toxicology reports. So that's not the case.
No, it's not the case. And you also have to remember that some toxicology also can be done off of muscle mass. So they could have gotten some muscle mass too, or they could have looked to see if there was some toxicity there.
So just because Alex was found to be of natural causes doesn't mean that that's the final word on it, pending Tammy's,
Exactly.
because they're definitely going to be comparing those samples, most likely.
Right. And I'm guessing they ordered like every test possible for hers.
Now, also another question as well that we've been trying to come up with, well, two. The first one being, can you explain the piece of the medical report that talks about the feces? Because
the glove.
Yeah, the glove. What are they talking about?
Okay, so when you die, it's not pretty. Basically, you piss and shit yourself because, your brain is basically telling all of your orifices and organs to, especially like, let's say the anus, squeeze tight, don't let go. Same thing with your bladder, squeeze tight, don't let go. Once that connectivity isn't there, those muscles relax and you're going to piss and shit yourself. So more than likely, and also if he was having some sort of cardiac episode, there could have been where he either tensed up and then relaxed and he basically would have shit himself. If they moved him, if he was wearing shorts or maybe if he was just in his boxers or whatever, or even pants, depending on how it was, there could have been poop all over the place. What's interesting, though, is that if you have taken too much of tetrahydrozoline, that does cause diarrhea.
Mm-hmm.
So that'd be something interesting, diarrhea and vomiting.
Not to be too crass, but from the way that Zulima's son made it out to be in the 911 call, it didn't sound like, he was having a solid bowel movement and there may have been an errant piece here or there. It made it sound like his stomach had quite a deal of upset.
Right. And is it weird to you that they specifically say they had, a glove over it? It sounds like they say the glove and hair are not collected at the direction of law enforcement. Is there any tests that they could have run on that to see what caused it, or just it's common, who cares?
Oh no, it's common, and basically it would have made more work for them because they'd have to then determine whose hair that is. Is it his? Is it one of the EMTs? Was it maybe an errant hair from one of us? Because as you know, the transfer between two people, you could be standing with somebody and you are constantly transferring dander, skin follicles, hair, spit, everything as you are talking with somebody. So, it would be hard to determine whose it is and why it's there. So more than likely it's like, well, it's covered in shit too. Why do we want it?
Another question I had, if you were looking at that digestive system and they talk about how the stomach had a dark red liquid, because of the color and it potentially being blood, is that something that they would have looked at all? Or it's, in my opinion, the way that I read it, they noticed it, they wrote it down, and then they did nothing with it. They didn't test it.
Yeah, I found that a bit weird. Because that would be something that I would have checked. But being that it was smooth gray-white mucosal lining in the esophagus, and also the stomach was intact and the surfaces, you'd go, well, there's no ulcers, so that could be something he ate. So that's why, there was no ulcerations, there was no inflammation. So that would make the medical examiner go, well, it was obviously something he ate, because that, there's no reason for blood being in the system. Because the only way that would have gotten there is either through the esophagus or if the lining of the stomach had been compromised. And that wasn't there.
Okay, so nothing that there's just so many ways that could have turned that color, so it's probably not worth looking at or trying to determine.
Exactly.
Got it.
Tests are expensive.
Now, let's move on to Narcan.
Okay, Narcan. We had an interesting discussion about that.
I went down the damn rabbit hole on Narcan, and it is possible. Even on Narcan's, the pharmaceutical company who produces brand Narcan for police departments and whatnot, it is possible to overdose on Narcan. However, in the toxicology report, it looks like, what's the level of that? It was just standard, right?
Yeah, it was a standard point. I think it was 0.5 or something like that.
And something that I learned, which I did not know beforehand, is that it's become standard operating procedure for an EMT to administer Narcan if someone is slumped over, not breathing, whatever. They will dose them up with Narcan. I did not know that that was kind of the standard. So is that a very, very new thing then that they're doing, just as kind of a...
I would say yes, because from having people come in to the ME's office, that was not something that we tested for.
That's interesting. So nothing weird about the Narcan. The levels were fine. So nothing shady or weird about that at all. But yeah, the no-dose, I mean, that's about as like direct caffeination as you can get.
Mm-hmm. Was he having problems sleeping?
Well, he was a truck driver.
Okay, but see, here's the thing. Again, going back to the tetrahydrozoline. It makes you sleepy. It kind of like numbs you. So was he trying to get rid of that numbing with no-dose? Or was he just trying to stay awake because he was driving? See, I don't know. I just keep going back to that.
You've been following this case very, very, very closely, Iris. So let's just move on. Are you ready, Amanda, for speculation period?
Yeah, my favorite.
Mine too. So, Iris, what do you think happened in all of this? What do you think happened to the kids? How do you think Lori and Chad are connected? Tell us the scoop on what you think is going on in this show.
Okay, so in this shit show, here it goes. The children, I hate to say it, the children are no longer with us. Because if they were, Lori, even though she feels that she is a higher being and has been transmutated and all this other stuff, she believes herself above man's law because the only law that she needs to follow is God's, because she has been transmutated. But for her to be put in a position that she is in right now, unless she thinks that she is a martyr or has been convinced by Chad that she is supposed to be a martyr, she'd say, well, you know what? Here's the kids. Let me go.
Well, supposedly it's for their safety that she can't say that.
Oh, safety from what, though? I mean, it's not like...
Of course.
Right. So I believe the children were going to get in the way and they have been disposed of. And that breaks my heart, for one. Now, Chad has completely convinced Lori that she is a goddess, or through this transmutated being that can do this or that, and that the world's going to end. So again, Lori has nothing to lose. She doesn't care, because once July comes around, none of this is going to matter, supposedly. So what I think is that for Chad and Lori, thinking that they don't have to abide by man's law, went ahead and did whatever the fuck they wanted, and went ahead and did away with Tammy, conspired to get rid of Charles, got rid of the children, so they could be that prophet and his minion and lead the 144,000 into the apocalypse. Because the only way that they were going... Because if you look in the Bible, the 144,000, the couples, they're not couples, they're all men, according to the Bible. They're all men. There's 12,000 men from each tribe of Israel. That's what the 144,000 is in Revelation. These guys think that it's couples. Okay, fine, whatever. But it's couples. It doesn't say families, it's couples. So there's going to be no children. So these 144,000 are going to be a man and a woman, no children, and for them to be able to do what they need to do, they had to get rid of people. They had to get rid of these kids. And that's why they're there. And that's my speculation.
And you think, too, after reading the examiner report for Alex, you still think that they had something to do with it as well?
They had to have, or I kind of like what you had said in the last episode. If Chad convinced Alex that he needed to be a martyr, he would have done it.
Mm-hmm. And they've mentioned how he followed their word, right?
Yeah, and also if you think about it, at the end days, there are going to be martyrs. So maybe they convinced him that he needed to be one of those martyrs to bring the end of days.
Could be.
You know, when you tie religion into all of this stuff, or a would-be religion, it really, really skews everything. It really does. And it just throws it out there and anything could happen.
It's true. Well, thank you so much, too. Like, I learned a lot about autopsies and how things are done and why certain things are done.
No, we really appreciate it because we know nothing about autopsies and how that works. And so, you know, I was so clueless. I was like, oh my God, Narcan. He had Narcan in his system. Why? And then immediately people were like, hey, lady, like, that's normal now. And I'm like, oh, I wasn't aware of that.
Where are the tests that should have been ordered that I would have ordered?
Yes, exactly. And that's really good to know, though. And something else I didn't know, that it's possible that the FBI, because they did take, you know, samples, the police department did, so therefore the FBI probably
I'm happy that there's more ways to get more tests done.
Yes, and that test may be going on in the background that we're not aware of.
Last week, I want to say, hold on, let me find it. We mentioned that Justin Lum had reported that the police are still investigating. Right? So he reported that, I think, on May 8th, I want to say. Yeah, the day that he posted, okay, so he dropped the autopsy results, and then he came out and said that that Alex's death is still an active investigation. So that makes sense why they took the blood then.
Interesting. Yeah, that's right. Because, I mean, it's been, what, 5 months now since the autopsy, and they're still investigating?
Yeah, is that weird? I don't really have a lot of points of reference for this, right? But I just found it really weird that Tammy was exhumed in December. Alex died in December. And, like, what, one day after Tammy's body was exhumed, which is suspicious and weird in itself. And then, you know, it's been over 5 months since we've had results. So, and we still don't have Tammy's results yet. Still don't have those. So I was like, well, what's going on?
No, we won't see those results until after during the trial. And let me tell you something. It could also be that Alex was set up to be the scapegoat.
Okay, so my speculation is Alex. I truly believe that all of this was planned by Chad so meticulously that Alex was going to be the scapegoat for all of this, and Alex is no longer now conveniently with us to tell his side of the story. Exactly.
Like, Alex was supposed to take the kids to a certain friend, and Alex was supposed to do this, and Alex was supposed to do that. How do you prove it? He's not here anymore.
Mm-hmm. And they were still looking at Charles's death, I believe, too. So, interesting.
That's a lot, but we will definitely, Iris, be asking you to come back, and we really appreciate your time. That'll, I guess, tie up this segment.
Yeah, thank you. I learned so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a good time.
So, guys, that wraps up this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Again, you can find us at WeSawTheDevil.com, Facebook at We Saw the Devil, Twitter, We Saw the Devil, Instagram is We Saw the Devil Podcast. And as always, if you have questions, concerns, complaints, compliments, you can email us at WeSawTheDevil@gmail.com. If you like what you heard in this episode, please consider supporting us on Patreon. That's Patreon, patreon.com/We Saw the Devil. What Patreon is, you can subscribe for as little as $3 a month, and you get a series of benefits. And your subscription helps us make a better show. And in turn, we give you things like access to a private Facebook group with just Patreons, Patreon-only episodes. You can help us pick the cases, and then you get merch. So stickers, t-shirts, mugs, just various things. We have a whole bunch, and the tier system is actually explained on our Patreon, so please check that out. Also, if you haven't left a review and a rating on iTunes, please consider taking 10 seconds out of your day to do that as well. We would sincerely appreciate it. So that wraps up today's episode. Next week, we have our Patreon-only episode coming. We will also be continuing our series on the East Area Rapist. Next week, we'll continue with the Visalia Ransacker series of Joseph James D'Angelo. So a lot of cool stuff coming down the pike, guys. Thank you again for listening. Until next crime.